Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again. It's 11:04 on a Saturday morning. Hope everyone's doing good. It is getting really, really close to Christmas here. Christmas is just a few days away. So yeah, today I'm gonna do a little bit of a different show. Sometimes I like to do maybe like two parts. I'll like talk about a movie and I'll break it up sometimes with like two or three different parts because sometimes movies really lend itself to that. So today is going to be about that, about a movie I reviewed yesterday, Eyes Wide Shut. I am totally steeped right now. Up from this point, it started, I would say, on Thursday. Wednesday night, it officially started, for what it's worth, and I'm officially in as far as movies go. Well, in general, but movies, it's all Christmas movies right now until Christmas Day. Probably Christmas Day we will not watch Christmas movies. I don't generally watch Christmas movies with my family. I do with my girlfriend. We watch Christmas movies together, and we have been, and we'll probably watch more on Christmas Eve. We'll see. And I'm gonna go over my folks for somewhat of an earlier preliminary Christmas Eve celebration, the day before Christmas Eve, because we had made some other plans. And typically, when I go over my folks, we have a big meal usually, and then I usually rent a ton of movies. So that's the plan for this coming Monday, which I'm always excited. We got together the last time we had a big movie marathon. It was on Thanksgiving, and we watched like four movies in one sitting. It was pretty epic. So I'm on vacation officially now, so it's nice. I have a bunch of time off, so it's cool. And that's the plan for that coming Monday. For this coming Monday is to I'm gonna go to Opera House probably in the morning, try to get as many movies as I can. Especially, I typically, whenever I go to Opera House now, I don't usually buy, or I should say, I don't usually rent movies there that I've seen before. I pretty much focus on just new releases because again, I love old films. I have my go-to genres or my favorite decades. So I'm always going back to that. And most of the movies that I buy, it's kind of centered around that. I do buy some new films, and maybe Santa Claus will be bringing me some new films this year. We'll see. And but typically when I go to Opera House, I only buy or rent new releases. I try to, as much as I love movies, and I'm kind of an old school movie enthusiast. Especially films in the '70s and '80s. I love to try to stay contemporary and try to check out what's coming out. You know, I I have played that card, I guess, to a degree, or have had that perception of, I call it the grandpa syndrome, where you kind of sit with your arms crossed and you're like, oh, they don't make them like they used to. And I kind of believe that. I've gotten a little bit more cynical about that and more realistic. I do feel that way. But that being said, I also feel like I have seen some really, great movies this year, especially in the horror genre. And I did a show probably about a month or two ago on my favorite films of 2024. I don't usually do like a best of that particular year video, but this was a newer show that I decided to do because I saw some really great newer films. So when I go to Opera House, like when I'll go Monday, I will try to seek out. It gets hard to find something that is, that seems, good. I didn't have, the last time I went there was on Thanksgiving, and we didn't really see any. The movies were not very good. It was still a fun time, but the movies were not very good. So I'm gonna try. my hardest to find some good flicks. But it's always I don't ever like I won't go over there and I won't rent any Christmas movies for us to watch. That's something we never do. When I was a little kid, we would watch Christmas movies, that were on or whatever. But typically, we would never even watch Christmas movies per se. We were watching like horror movies, action movies, whatever was new. And one year we watched. I remember one year we watched on Christmas Day. We watched The Exorcist, and that was pretty amazing. So that kind of gives you a little, heads up as to how my family is. But I will seek out hopefully a handful of new releases, and we'll eat a bunch of food and do that. So again, it's Christmas season. Yesterday was a seriously epic day. I went to two parties, two Christmas parties back to back, and I can't say I've ever really done that where I've had two parties that were literally one was fading into the next. I had a little bit of time in between. So yesterday, because I work at the Montessori School in Belfast, which is just an amazing place to be a part. It's an amazing place to be a part of. Great, great. It's a great it's a great part-time job for me. I love it, and it's very close to me. It's like 6 minutes away. And we had our annual Christmas party yesterday, and that was a blast. We had a great time. We get to, all the teachers and everybody there, the staff gets to kind of, cut back and throw down and get a little crazy. There's all kinds of food. Everybody makes food and brings food in. It's a big potluck thing, and it's a great time. And so I went there in the morning, like around noon. We have the party pretty early. And I was there for a few hours. And then after that, maybe an hour or two after that, I went down to my girlfriend's friend's party in Rockland, Maine. And we got there about 4:30, and we were there till about 10:30 or 11. So it was a long party, and it was great. There was a lot of great food. There was even a group of carolers that were there. They were singing Christmas music, all like the classic Christmas tunes. They were playing Christmas music there. Um, and it was a great time. It was great. And then when I came home late last night, or later last night, it was pretty late, but not super, super late, it started to snow. And it's been snowing since, and it's been really nice. Not a lot, but enough, maybe half an inch, but enough to where it's sticking. So we'll see how long it stays. But it was great. It was like, okay, how can we put you in the mood for Christmas? And I'm like, oh, okay, this is the way to do it. So it was very cool. And so very, very cool. I can't say I've had an epic day like that before where it was full on Christmas festivities all in one day. It was pretty epic. So today's show, I'm doing a little bit of a different thing. I uploaded a video yesterday on the first Christmas movie of the season for me, which has kicked off all of my Christmas movie marathon, was Eyes Wide Shut. And I know some people are like, what the hell are you talking about? Eyes Wide Shut? That's such a, it's of course, the last film that Stanley Kubrick gave us, the genius of Stanley Kubrick, and it's kind of a strange film. It's kind of a bizarre. It's a very esoteric, a very sensual, a very erotic film, very provocative. Not really things that you necessarily equate with Christmas, but the thing is to me that movie. I actually finished watching it last night after I came home from the party. I made a big cup of tea, and I chilled out for a while, and then I watched. I still had maybe an hour to go on Eyes Wide Shut, so I sat on my couch and I finished watching it. And so I decided to do. I want to talk more about the film, so I decided to do a part two on this. And this is also kind of the kickoff to for the next 4 or 5 days, 5 days or so. There will be nothing but Christmas movies coming your way. I will not be able to do a video on. I traditionally always do a Christmas video, Christmas Day Film Fanatic video. I will not be doing that to this Saturday, this coming Christmas, because I will be kind of away from my computer and such. So I'm gonna do a bunch of videos leading up to that anyway, and I'll probably do one the day after. I always do a Christmas special usually. I always do a Halloween special, so it's part of a kind of a tradition of what I'm doing. So I finished Eyes Wide Shut, and I decided to, there's so much going on in that film. There's so many interesting and unique ideas and even concepts for that matter that I decided to talk more about it. And the thing that's so funny about it, for me, why I think that this movie is such a Christmas movie, is literally last night when I was finished watching it, I was counting the amount of Christmas trees that you see in the film, and the amount of Christmas lights, the amount of Christmas decorations that are in each scene in Eyes Wide Shut. And I would challenge anyone out there to find a movie that actually has more Christmas pageantry in each scene. I mean, this movie literally vomits Christmas, even though the film and story itself has nothing to do with Christmas. The setting, the world that this movie takes place in, is the most Christmas oriented thing I've ever seen, which is so funny. It's an interesting like juxtaposition, I guess, is a good way to put it. And it's literally that. Every scene in Eyes Wide Shut, there is a Christmas tree, there's a vast display of lights, there's Christmas wreaths, there's in every scene. And even the cinematography itself has that kind of Christmas aesthetic to it. So it's very interesting, I was noticing it more and more with watching it. And I have seen Eyes Wide Shut. It's one of those movies. I've talked about this experience around certain movies. Eyes Wide Shut. And again, I want to. There was a new subscriber, a new gentleman who commented. I wrote this giant post on the video I posted yesterday on Eyes Wide Shut, and this is going to be like, I'm going to title it Part 2, who really talked about this movie and his love of Kubrick and went into lots of detail about his other films, what his work means to him, and that was very impressive that someone would take the time to really articulate a real, his or hers real, what his work, what Kubrick's work really means to them, and that was really cool to see. And I love when folks feel that inclined to spend some time and to really lay some nice comments and to talk about our mutual love of directors and film. Kubrick is my favorite director of all time, so that's always, well, kind of one of the main reasons I do this channel. So I really appreciate that. And I just commented back a few minutes ago. So, and again, I've seen, this is one of those movies, and I've talked about that before a lot, where there's always those movies that I can say or remember pretty clearly how many times I've seen it. Maybe a certain film. Like I recently rewatched and did a show on all of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. And there's like the first two, for instance, I've seen so many times I can't really count. But the later ones, I've only seen a couple of times, and I can really. That's a very vivid thing in my head. So that also includes many, many, many other movies. An endless list of films that where I've seen it so many times, it reaches a point of where I totally lose count. And there's also within that giant list, there's also maybe a smaller list of films that I kind of go back to really frequently. They're almost like comfort food that I will probably at the end of the day I've probably watched this smaller grouping of films even more. And Eyes Wide Shut is one of those movies that I've seen so many times. It's just it's insane. I can't even begin to throw out a number on how many times I've seen this movie. I saw this in the theater. I talked I talked about this yesterday. Excuse me. I talked about this yesterday on how it's it was one of the most memorable experiences I ever had in the theater. It's the only Kubrick movie I ever got a chance to see in the theater. It was his last movie. It was a very strange feeling going to see that movie because it was at that time it was the most anticipated movie I wanted to see. But the strange thing around it was that Stanley Kubrick had passed away about I think it was like a three months or so before the movie came out. So, and there was all this talk that this movie was just incredibly, just a very mysterious film. And there was so much, but no one knew what this movie was about. There was no indication as to like at all what the vibe was going to be. So, it there was kind of this strange, anticipation, but a little bit, at least for me, this incredible anticipation to see the film, but a kind of a sadness also because he's my favorite director. I've always loved him as a director. Always loved his films, but it wasn't until college when I really got into film and I really got into seeing all of his movies and kind of studying him, and reading lots of interviews with him and a bunch of other circumstances that just got me more and more, enthralled by his work and him as a director. It was the only movie I got to see, and I remember seeing it in the theater at the Colonial Theater here in Belfast, and it was one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. One of my greatest memories I've ever had seeing a film in the theater. And one of the reasons it's one of those experiences that cemented kind of my opinion about physical media, but then also the experience of going to a theater and having that experience because I feel like it's really important. It's like for me it's like going to see a concert. I feel like it's an integral part of our culture. Going to see some beautiful works of art, paintings, or going to see an artist express himself, like just that having that interaction, and that seeing Eyes Wide Shut was one might be the definitive experience for me that cemented that where to where I am now, and has has helped shape all of my opinions to this day. I remember after the movie was over, and the credits came up. there was just such an eerie silence, and people, and it was a packed house, and I remember not one person getting out of the seat. There was like this eerie calm. It was very surreal. The movie itself was incredibly surreal, very mysterious, but it was such an enthralling experience. So, and the reason I wanted to kind of do a part two for Eyes Wide Shut is there's always been this thing around Kubrick's films because his films are there's there's so much meticulous detail in all of his films. There's the tapestry that he displays that art that kind of comprises his films or what his films are made of. There's a lot of layers. There's a lot of depth to his films, and I feel like it's so calculated, and I think because he took so much time and effort putting so much passion in each film that that's why I feel like if you're a fan of his films, why people will go. I know for me, definitely, why I will go back to that well and watch his films over and over again, and yet I will get something new each time that I have that experience. It's never seeing a Kubrick film is never like a one-dimensional experience. I described it yesterday in the video of like an experience of like peeling an onion. There's all these other layers. There's there's a lot of metaphor, there's subtext to things, and it's very calculated. And of course, Kubrick, his mind was worked like a mathematician. He was a strategist at the highest level. All of those great stories of him, you know, basically being able to make a living before he became a filmmaker as a professional chess player in Central Park in New York City where he lived. And then before eventually he moved to London, England. Once he had a lot of success, he got married and moved to England and had children. But for a long time, he was a New Yorker, and so he made his living doing that. And I've always felt like you can see that side of his brain, how he would play chess. Essentially, he would use that same strategy for his art. And but on the other side of things, there's always been these kind of kooky people out there in the world that have always felt that Kubrick had some kind of ulterior motive or some kind of, you know, had some kind of agenda that with his storytelling that is often tied into all of these kinds of crazy, wacky conspiracy theorists out there that are unfortunately everywhere. Now it's everywhere with all of the drone UPA UFO things that are just completely insane and ridiculous, and they completely undermine any actual real credible news or factual things that are out there, and significant things that are true, that are proven. It undermines all of those things. So there's so much of that. But like one movie in particular that has often been really, really looked at, where there was even, I think there was a documentary about it, and I think it was called Apartment 132, and it's one of the apartments in the Overlook Hotel, or one of the rooms in the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. That movie, The Shining, was probably, well, The Shining, and I would say Eyes Wide Shut too, is definitely a film that is looked at that way. But most of his films are, but the focus seems to be especially on The Shining and especially on Eyes Wide Shut. And with The Shining, there was a documentary that came out, Apartment 132, where basically this director makes these claims that this film had, just really deep social commentary on various things, socially, on science, and about these various conspiracy theories that whack jobs, crazy kooky people that kind of subscribe to like the whole Alex Jones kind of thing. So where there's ulterior alternate motives behind this film of trying to push this kind of weird political agenda. And, and it's really in that documentary there's actually even a scene of where the filmmakers go to a, I believe it's like a Q&A of a showing, a later showing of the Shining, and they actually interview some of the guys and the crew that worked on The Shining. I mean, Stanley Kubrick worked with pretty much the same crew for most of his films. He had such a, he had a pretty insane reputation of, as far as him being kind of tyrannical on the set. But he also had a lot of love and a lot of love from the people he worked with, and a tremendous amount of respect. So he worked with a lot of the same people on every movie. And in this Q&A, these filmmakers asked these guys basically about if there's any truth to any of these things. And they basically say, well, all of these, things about, where they're, where they go into all of these things of that there's Kubrick was about trying to prove a point on various conspiracy theories. They basically say that's all bullshit, and they basically debunk it, saying, well, no, it wasn't. He didn't have any agenda other than trying to be, a masterful storyteller, and all of these crackpots were just kind of reading into it and creating these like fake stories around it. And no, he was, and they basically reduce it to, well, no, he was just a master craftsman, and that was it. That he was so meticulous and he was so patient. And Eyes Wide Shut and everything, all of these various crazy wingnut ideas have been dispelled. And Eyes Wide Shut is also a film that I think gets looked at as having some kind of, hidden agenda, or there's like some kind of strange subtext meaning, in regards to conspiracy theories. And I feel like it's the same thing of where I feel like this movie it's very complex, but I think it essentially deals, and it can mean something to you individually. It can mean something different. I think that is something that's pretty easy to accept or to be open to. But beyond that, I don't really feel. I feel like it just goes back to Kubrick was just a master at his craft. And ultimately, like I had said before in the video yesterday, I think this movie, you know, is something. Well, I think really in general, Kubrick's films can mean something different to you. There's not like say that like traditional definitive ending, or conclusion. All of his films have some kind of ambiguity to them, and I think that which is fantastic because you can kind of individually, individually or collectively get your own experience, reach maybe your own conclusions to certain things. And I think Eyes Wide Shut definitely is that. It's kind of the epitome of that. I think for me individually, what this movie means to me, or what the feeling I get out of this movie, it's going to probably, it's going to be a different experience for the person next to me. But I think that's great. Like for me, I just feel like this movie is essentially about relationships, but it has all of these kinds of esoteric, you know, um, elements around around ritual, the occult to a degree. Even I feel like this movie is a thriller. Also, it's It's actually a funny. There's some comedy in this movie. It's kind of funny. It's subtle, but it's there. It's a drama. Definitely a melodrama. It's it's got this element of it's definitely steeped in erotica. So it's it's got and it's a mystery. I feel like this movie's a mystery too. But it has this thing. I think this movie does such a great, fantastic job of giving you this experience of are you in this dream or are you awake? Are you experiencing a dream or are you in reality? It's about like kind of kind of your perception. And I think this movie does a brilliant job doing that. And so it means a lot to me as a viewer and as a fan of this film. It's got all of those things, but I think essentially it's about relationships between men and women and how you interact, in the bedroom and outside of the bedroom. I think that's essentially what this movie is. But it's got all of these other elements. So, and again, like I said in the beginning of the show, this is overall you can't get any more of a Christmas. You can't find a film out there that has so much of a Christmas kind of bow wrapped around it. It's wild. Like literally every scene, there is some degree of Christmas. Well, there's a Christmas tree in every scene in this movie, which is kind of hilarious. But I figured that's why I equate this movie to being a Christmas movie, and this movie is the kickoff to all of the other Christmas movies that I'm currently watching and that I will be uploading up until Christmas Day. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.